Good afternoon, everyone. We'll start in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm going to get started in the event that we do have a lot of information to share today. As you may know from the broadcast, this is a core update in reference to training. So hopefully you're in the right training. So those of you on the West Coast, good morning. Those of you on the East Coast, good afternoon. My name is Famaine Brown. I'm your CMS Acquisition Career Manager. And I say that with happiness because it has just been a great deal of trying to get everyone on the right page so they can continue their certification or apply for a new certification. So when you see these slides, don't start rumbling, just try to digest it and we're going to try to help you through it, okay? So I want you to also know this is like maybe almost a three-part training. The training is starting with the core updates, and then we have Ms. Heather Brown here, who is going to teach you about the EUA EFI. Okay, it sounds fancy. Hopefully it won't be hard. I understand some cores have already gone through the training and it's been pleasant. So, and basically it's teaching you the new way how to bring a contractor on board through the, I'm going to say the OIT process. That's safe to say it that way. Lastly, I believe we'll have a representative from OAGM, Nathaniel Dean, who will share some changes in reference to administration processes through CAMS. So this is going to be a really interesting training, so let's try to stay alert. We're going to hopefully try to get you out as soon as possible. And do know that this PowerPoint will be on our website. I'm going to talk about our website. I'm excited about our website for you to go back and forth and also have as a resource or a reference. And also note that you will not understand everything I say today. So if you have questions, I also have contact information. I also have Louise Shue here. Louise, wave your hand over there. She is also helping with the reviews of the recertifications and the initial certifications. So as you all know, I'm going to start out with, due to no hiring, we have not been able to keep up the fast pace that we used to display in the early 2016. So with that said, I've asked those individuals who are applying for new certifications to either give me a call or email to let me know that you definitely need this as soon as possible, or for those who are lagging behind in reference to their research, to give Louise or I a call so we can try to help you individually. I just want you to know that presently there are 2,000 plus cores at CMS, and you are stationed throughout the United States. So we're going to try to do our best to accommodate everybody near and far in reference to their request for certification or recertification. So with that said, I wanted to let you know when we decide to review your request, these are some of the things I would like for you to keep in mind. And maybe if you can understand some of these changes, well, maybe not changes, this has been going on all along, but I think if we bring it to the forefront, your submittal will go right through. So number one, back in 2016, I put out a broadcast, and I know everybody doesn't actually pay attention to the broadcast, to update your profile. This is so important because now we can run reports per component. And a lot of managers are asking for information component-wise, but sometimes it's not accurate because all the cores have not updated their profile accordingly. So there are instructions on our website, which I'm going to talk about later on in the training, how to go in and update your profile. Next, I want to bring to the attention the functional experience transcript, which is only submitted on the initial request for your certification and at level 2 and 3. Level 1 doesn't need it. They don't need it because they don't have to have any experience. But for level 2 and 3, it is an important document that is reviewed by myself and Louise and also headquarters. There are 13 different competencies to address, and I have to say that there are some creative people in answering questions. But the bottom line is, if you're not answering the competencies correctly, I can't send it through. And I'll talk more about the competencies on the next slide. Also, understand that there are 3 sections on the FAITAS blackboard. I call it a blackboard because you can do things on it, upload and type on it. So there's 3 different sections. The first section, of course, is education. The second is experience, and then the third is training. So for cores, you never touch the education section. No need. So please, don't send me your transcripts, don't send me your degrees. You only need to put information in on your experience section, and that's only if it's a new request. Recertification, you don't need to touch that either. And lastly, training. All training goes under training. And we'll get more into that about what training needs to be there and what training is already sitting in your training history. So just like I mentioned before, no need to upload resumes, transcripts, or any other training that does not apply to the FAC-C certification acquisition. Now, I did have some people upload some training in reference to a sewing class. Now, I'm sure it was probably long, hard, and not easy, but I guess they were showing some type of management concepts or whatever, or time concepts, but the bottom line is you can't really associate a sewing class with acquisition unless you're buying sewing machines. Okay, going forward, you have to remember the training that you submit has to be in your 2-year window. And I believe if you're doing recertification, this is especially for recertification, I'm going to bring this forward, you have a little date up there that says beginning date and ending date. So you just need to pay attention to those dates. And any training you've taken in between those dates will be applicable. Also with new certification, the same thing applies. Starting with the date that you upload your information in the system is when that clock starts ticking. And then once you complete it is when you will be within that 2-year window. So just pay attention to those dates. It's very important. Here's another thing that's very important, and we lose some of the information, or we can't find the person's information because the supervisor is not correct. I know we go through reorgs, and I know we get changed around, so when that does happen, please try to be mindful that I need to go into my profile and update my new manager. And make sure your manager understands that nothing can go forward unless that manager is also in FAITAS. So those are some other things you need to remember in reference to updating your profile for the supervisor. If you hold a FAC-COR certification at a lower level, you are applying for a higher level, you do not need to attach the lower level certification. We are aware, and as you know, the FAITAS is a repository for all your training. So we would have a copy of that certificate already. So there's no need to include that going forward. And also, that reference the other 2 programs where we have FAC-PPM, and FAC contracting. So, and I'm not sure is everyone aware of this, but there are some reciprocity processes that you can follow. If you were a FAC contracting individual who has a current certification at the same level, you can become a COR if you just take a few mandatory training. And it's like 4 or 5 trainings that are all online. And as far as FAC-PPM, if you hold a current level of FAC-PPM certification, you can also become a COR at that same level, taking some of those mandatory, I think there are 4 classes that you need to do. So as I mentioned just a few minutes ago in reference to the FAC-COR Competency Model, this is just an example about acquisition planning. And as you can see, all 3 levels are mentioned, and it also gives you an example of the things that you should write to just for the acquisition planning. I do usually experience a good paragraph in reference to the activities, but then there are some people that go off task and start talking about things that are really not applicable. So we're going to make sure that you have this competency model on our AGX website. That's the name of our website, if you didn't know, the OAGM website. We're going to have this model there so you can have a guide and a template to have something to refer to when you're writing your competencies. Now keep in mind, this is only for individuals who are applying for new certification. If you're already recertified or you're at a level that you feel that you're going to stay at, you really don't have to worry about this right now. But if you do want to move forward in a higher level, you need to look at this competency model when you start writing your functional experience transcript. That's the 2 documents that you can merge together. 13 competencies on the functional transcript, and then looking at this competency model to see how those competencies apply to this template. So here's our AGX website, and I'm so excited about this because we are growing on this website more and more every day. So the quickest way to get to our website is just to go on our intranet and go up to CMS and then go to OAGM, and boom, you're right there at the website. More importantly, you want to go to this section at the lower bottom where it says College of Acquisition and Grants Training, and within there you will find a great deal of resources for course training and other information as well. Also, there are all type of templates there about how to do certain steps in FAITAS, which I know we all have challenges with, but all the information is there. Like I talked about how to do your profile, that's out there also. So just keep in mind that this PowerPoint will be uploaded probably not until Monday, but once it's uploaded, you'll be able to go in and review it and look at all type of information on OAGM. And if you notice, there's a panel in the middle on the first row that's related solely to CORs. So I don't know if how many of you are familiar with the COR manual. Who's in here familiar with the COR manual? Anybody by hands? Okay, thank God. All right, so this is going to be like the Bible for the COR. We are still working on it every day. It's a living document because as legislation change and policies change, we have to update this. Also, we have new software too that we are using for the COR manual to make sure the changes can happen a little quicker instead of 3 or 4 months down the road. There's also a team that meets, I want to say, once a month, try to go over certain chapters. So if you are interested in being on that team and want to hear your voice heard, because you know, maybe you have a better idea of how to do something, or maybe it might be a quicker way to do something, or we can do it quicker with some type of technology. Let us know. You can always send me an email, or Louise, or Nathaniel Dean. Nathaniel, can you take a stand over there? Nathaniel is in charge of policy, and he'll be more than happy to give you information on the core manual and how you can be on the panel to listen to new ideas and help orchestrate how the manual is going to be written. So as you can see, I'm not going to take a lot of time on the website, but I'm very excited about this because it's a long time coming. It is a plethitude of information about how OAGM functions in reference to contracting and in grants. I can't say that we'll always have it up to date to the data. Like I said, it's a living document, but please go out and look and try to use it. And I think the more you use it, the more you'll feel comfortable with it and trying to find answers when you can't get Louise and I on the phone or via email. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. This is the new training, FY18, for FAC-COR Level I, and it will go into effect January 1 of 2018. And of course, those of you who are already in the queue, we will review your requests in accordance with the policy that's already in place. But we're trying to get a head start to share this information for those individuals who felt that they needed to start applying for a new certification or wanted to do a recertification. So level 1 is very simplistic. All the training is here. Those shaded areas are the areas that headquarters require that we must have. And then the rest of the training there, I'm sure some of you are familiar with. We have added Ms. Brown's training, the EUA and EFI. Ms. Brown will talk more about that in reference to how you can actually do the training online or via webinar, right? Okay. Oh, and Ms. Brown, would you like to, Heather Brown, please stand up so everyone can see you. She will be your trainer for the EUA, EFI piece. And then, of course, we have a new green training, which is on the FAI. So that's kind of exciting. I think it's good. And then, of course, we have still the CAMS, invoice, and voucher training and requisition. So as you know, we only have that training twice a month. And for some reason, the training is really filling up quickly. So we're trying to get more offerings for the virtual piece. So those of you in the region, then you can definitely be able to participate all the time. But just note that when the broadcast comes out, you just need to go and try to register as soon as possible for those who want to be in class. But we definitely would try to keep as many offerings as possible virtually. So level 2, So level 2, here again, those areas shaded are the training that headquarters requires. There's no substitutes for those trainings, but we are giving you different CLCs to do online and FACs. So what we're trying to do, which we know it's hard, especially for those in the region, to try to take the core training. So what we're trying to figure out is ways that you can do everything online. And then of course now we have the great telework program. More and more people are working from home on a full-time basis. So we're trying to factor all those changes in. So that's why we're trying to be more mindful of having training online. So just read the little red print at the bottom where it talks about CLPs and how you can earn them. And this helps you to figure out how to apply for new certifications. So here are some options also that you can do for core level 2. Definitely the CLC 106 and 222 is on that FAITAS list that you see with red and green look like stoplights on the FAITAS system. But let's keep in mind though, we are not using the dashboard the way those lights are there with green and red. We're only asking you to use some of those trainings that are listed there in order to complete your FAC-COR training. And keep in mind, this is new, initial training I'm speaking of right now. So these are some more examples of training you can do online. Keep in mind, though, that we are not partners with TAI or VA. If you do try to sign up under them, they will charge you a fee, and unfortunately, I can't pay for it. So that would be something that you would have to speak with your manager in order to have that approved. Here's another good list that you can use going forward in reference to electives. And yes, all of these are online. Unfortunately, we couldn't find any that would be over 9 CLPs, but I think these do add up eventually, so this should be able to help you be able to complete your new requests for course certificate. So moving on to Core 3. Here again, we have some shaded areas. Those areas are the mandatory training from headquarters. And then the rest you see, you can do all online. Of course, here again, if you do the CAMS training, you do have a choice to be in class or online. So I'm going to stop there and ask if anybody has questions. Yes, ma'am. Can you get the mic and so everyone can hear? Thank you, Nathaniel. Oh, and Louise, yes. I think we have someone in the back, too.
Hi, Maine. How are you doing?
Good.
So with these classes, did you say when are they those new classes? When are they going to be available? Especially the ones online. Are they available now?
They are available now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, for example, my certification for the Core Level 3 is up January 4th.
So you'll be doing the new process.
So I should be taking all of these classes now instead of worrying about the
That's
old.
correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yes. And if I didn't mention it, like I said, if you're already in the queue, and if you even get in the queue at midnight, December 31st, you'll go by the old process, but anything past that, January 1st, you'll be doing the new. Louise?
Just to clarify, this is for initial. If you currently do not have FAC-COR Level 3, you're pursuing a FAC-COR Level 3, that's the checklist that you go by. If you currently have FAC-COR Level 3 already, this is not the list.
She knows. She knows.
We will talk about it later.
She's aware.
Okay, and I guess my question is follow up on that. I'm in the process of applying for my FAC-3. I just finished taking the courses from the prior list. So, and I'm finalizing my experience transcript. So are you saying now I have to go by this list, or when does this list apply?
January 1 is when this list applies. So it would behoove you to try to make it happen before December 31st.
Thank you.
Okay. So also, are there any questions on the line? Okay, I guess not. Oh, sorry, we have a question here. Mm-hmm.
In April of next year. So I'm got 32 credits now. So am I understanding you right that in order to not have to do this, I have to be done by December 31st?
Right. So, yeah, you need to be in the queue by then. So, because we have to have a cutoff date, so we're along the line. And we do know that we have some early achievers who try to get their information in when they still have maybe 16 or 17 months to try to get the information, but yeah, we have to cut it off at some time. But I will review, and if you're in the queue before December 31st, then you're okay. That's what I'm doing, okay? All right. So project management training, I know you hear a lot about it. I try to talk about it as, an interdisciplinary training because I'm thinking the more you know about the acquisition cycle, the better you can prepare for doing your job. So project management, we found a new one online. I know the regions will be happy about this, yay, that they can definitely take. It's FPM 120A. So this is a big change for us, and we're very happy to see it. So we just thought we'd give you a screenshot of how it would look if you went into FAITAS and signed up for the training. So the other project management training that helps you receive a level 1 or a level 2 are by these classes. And Louise and I felt that we would bring it to your attention because we do have some cores that take level 1 training or level 2 training or level 3. But then because some of these classes are not in the FAI site and a lot of the classes are by vendors that I bring in-house to train, there's certain steps that have to be taken in order for the class will be approved through headquarters. So as you can see, when you take any FAC-PPM class, let me start over, sorry. If you take a FAC-PPM class, check this slide to make sure how you should submit it first. If it's not one of these 426, 429, you don't have to submit an equivalency request. But outside of that, you do have to submit an equivalency request. And that's something that Louise Shu, if you send her an email, she'll send you the invite to the FAITAS, and that way, with the instructions, and that way you can have your training recognized in your training profile and your training history. So just keep that in mind. Some people get confused and they send the training forward, and sometimes we have to send it back because they haven't done that one step about the equivalency requests. But if these classes fall in line in the 400s or the 600, you don't have to do the equivalency request. So here's more about the equivalency request because I guess trying to talk about all 3 certification programs. The contracting certification, you do have to submit equivalency request for the training, as long as it's not through the FAI website or the DAU. And here again, if anyone is doing any contracting training, they would submit something, they will do an equivalency request, but it's only if it's been provided by a vendor that holds the class at 7111. I think that helps a little bit also. And then again, it's any FAC-PPM class except for these that are listed here. And here are some steps to follow when you feel that you need to do equivalency requests for program management training or for contracting training that is not being taken through the FAI website. And also note that sometimes we get quite a few of these and it might take a little while to have it returned to you. So if you don't get it within 5 to 8 business days, just give us an email or a call. So here's some frequent asked questions for initial new certification. In reference to the CAM classes, they are suitable both for existing CAMS users at all levels. Also, if you took CLC 046 or CLC 18, you do not need to complete FAC 038. That's all green procurement training. And that was one of our mandatory training previously, so we tell you you only need to take it once. If you have not completed writing statements of work, you can use CLC 056, Analyzing Contract Costs, to substitute. I know a lot of folks are very happy about that because that seems to be the class and no one can ever get into, and that's the only class they need to complete their training. So now here's an outlet. You can go to CLC 056. And my point request. Okay, so some people get my point request confused with equivalency request. So my point request is only when you're doing recertification, not new or initial certification. And please know that new and initial, I'm using it as the same synonymously because we say new sometimes and we say initial sometimes, but it means exactly the same. For recertification, you only use my point request during that time. And as I mentioned before, the new changes will go in effect January 1st, and if you're in the queue by December 31st, you will go by the old process. All right, so here we are with the recertification. So level 1, as you can see, the gray area is the class that's required by headquarters. And then the others are here. So I understand that Heather Brown has been given training to COR since June. Okay. So if you've already completed the training, and that I'm speaking of the EUA EFI training, just make sure that you can upload your certificate and you should be fine. You do not need to take it again. But that's only if you took the training starting in June of this year going forward, because Heather has quite a few sessions, and now of course she's rolling it out for the first time to all of the CORs at the same time. But just note, she will have more training sessions going forward, definitely in 2018. So I think this screen is very self-explanatory. I don't think there's anything else that I need to tell you. And I will ask for questions after I finish this part, if it is. So here for level 2 and level 3, it's the same amount of CLPs. And of course, the gray areas are the areas that are mandatory by HHS. And then we have some new online ethics and fraud, because I guess you guys are, especially those who are in like the 3rd or 4th generation of CORs, are tired of taking the same ethics and fraud training. So we thought we'd try to find some new training, and we have. So this is what we are offering in 2018. So as I spoke earlier about interdisciplinary training, these are some of the CON classes, meaning contracting classes, that a level 1 takes online. Don't be fooled, because it's a lot of work. But we're opening this training to CORs if they would like to take the training. And as you can see, there are very nice CLPs assigned to them. We would probably have to work with you in case, I know at other times when I've asked CORs to go in and DUA or FAI, sometimes they have these firewalls they can't get through and they're not able to bring up this training. So if that happens, first send an email to your IT individual, and then if they can help you, please let me know. But these are some really great training. It definitely helps you understand the other side of what goes on in contracting in reference to trying to put your procurements together. So here's another option that you can definitely use, especially those of you in the region. This will definitely be helpful. So frequently asked questions for recertification. I already spoke about how you don't need to complete these 046 or 018. You just need to do 038. because the 046, I don't believe is offered anymore, but I think the CLC 018 is what we've been using all along. My point request, remember, it's only functionable when you're doing recertification. And this is in order for you to bring your certificates forward under the training section. And we have more instructions on how to do that on our AGX website. Same thing with submit equivalency requests for FPM or CON courses. And then, of course, we have those exceptions. You do not submit my point request for courses which are enrolled in FAITAS or DAU. You must submit achievement requests and obtain your supervisor approval 1 month before your expiration date. So we would like for you to do that because we're finding that even though you do your part, sometimes the managers are not aware for some reason and it sits in their queue. We can't see it when it's in their queue. So when you call us and say why my request hasn't been approved, a lot of times it's sitting in the supervisor's queue. So just bring it to your supervisor's attention, maybe several times, and let them know that you're on a time clock, especially if you know, only 30 or 60 days out, to try to go in and review it and approve it as soon as possible. Here again, as I said, recertification is effective. The new recertification process is effective January 1st. And if you get everything in by the 31st, we'll definitely use the old policy. Here's more information on how to submit equivalency requests. We're trying to go over this more and more as much as possible, but so you can understand how to do this, because what happens if you don't do this right the first time? Louise has to go in, send you an email, then you have to send her an email with all your information, then she has to set it up, then she sends the email back, and then eventually it gets approved. So as you can see, that's a lot of back and forth. And hopefully if we can give you these points of interest, and hopefully it'll help you go through this process easily. I won't go step by step because I think it's pretty much self-explanatory. And then we also provided a slide in reference to my point request. I think the quickest thing to remember, you only do my point request with recertification, and then you can just follow these steps. Remember, this PowerPoint is going to be on our AGX website, so you can go back and refer to it as many times as you would like. All right, so I've been just told that the moderator will open the line up for questions. So moderator, can you open the line?
All lines have now been unmuted. If anyone would like to ask a question, you may do so now.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
If we, like in my case, I was trying to gear everything up for my recertification early because it's not due until August of 2018. But if I want to go ahead and submit before January 1st so that I don't have to comply with the new requirements immediately, like to my next recertification cycle, would that change my recertification cycle to then be run from like January 1st for 2 years?
Right, so yes, so if, like I mentioned before, if you get your information in by December 31st, that's how we will process it, even though I know you're not really due until August 2018.
So you won't change your date. It's still August 20.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
No, she doesn't need to restart.
Hello, I have a question.
Yes.
For recertification for level 2, it shows the 35 plus you need elective training and acquisition, project management, leadership, or communication subjects. Where's the list that you can use for this training for those 35 plus?
Well, they're all throughout the PowerPoint. So you can use the same training that's for the new or initial training that still counts. And then there's also another sheet there that gives you more CLPs that you can use.
They're listed on the PowerPoint?
That's correct. Do you have visual where you are?
Yes.
Okay, so that document that was shared, which we'll also upload on our AGX website, have all
Okay.
the training that you need to
Okay,
complete
so
that.
okay. It'll be on the AGX website?
Yes, under training.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Is it possible to go from a Core 1 to a Core 3, or do you have to be a Core 2 before coming a Core 3?
No, you do not. So in the core certification, you can jump from 1 to 3, but just keep in mind that you have to have the level of experience in order to qualify for the level 3, and as well as just jumping to, coming right in and going to a level 2.
And the experience does not then have to be at CMS. It could be from the outside.
It can be outside, but we do prefer within the last 2 years that you had federal civilian acquisition experience. And I shouldn't just say civilian, but we need to make sure that you have, if you have military, that counts too, but we do like to see some civilian.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question. You're saying effective January 1, the new requirements are in effect. But for recertification, what is the difference for recertification effective January 1? It looks like it's the same.
Well, we have new,
40.
well, the number of CLPs are the same, but we have new classes there that you need to take, and also you have to complete the EUA EFI training.
Okay, and you say in order to qualify under the current requirements that are in effect until the end of the year, everything needs to be in the queue. So that means all the training completed, all the submission is sitting there with your manager's approval?
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question about the writing statements of work class for the core level 2 requirement.
Yes?
I have a colleague who's been working on that, and it looks like that requirement may have changed.
Right, we have
Could I confirm that?
Correct. We have substituted it with a different class that's online. So where are they in their training? Because if they've completed that, and they've had the rest of their training, they should try to get their request in by December 31st.
Thank you. I believe she's not yet completed that class, so I wanted just to be sure to give her accurate information that there's been a substitution and that course is no longer required.
Correct.
Thank you.
My question is, that you indicated on slide 18 that for those of us who have completed the green procurement, the CLC 046 or the CLC 018, we don't have to complete the FAC 038, but if we choose to, then we will earn the 2 CLPs towards the recertification. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Great. Thank you.
I have a question regarding, so I was originally invited because this was supposed to be EFI, EUA, EFI training.
Well, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, because that's going to follow, okay?
I just wanted to make sure, because that was supposed to be from 1 to 2.
Okay.
And now I'm understanding, is that from 2 to 3?
Yes, ma'am. That's what's going to happen.
And will there be slides shared for that, since you're not sharing your screen? I haven't gotten anything. Somebody did forward me, not Crystal, but a participant forwarded me the slides for the OAGM training. Will a similar slide deck be sent out by someone for the EFI training so that we can follow along?
No. But do you have the link to the YouTube?
No, I was not given that. On my, when I registered it, it does not give me any of the right information.
The problem with the YouTube is that the slides are delayed. They're about 2 slides behind the speaking, so you can't really follow that way. You need to use the separate
really?
slides.
That's
Yeah.
the first time I heard that. All right, I have to make a correction. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's very confusing, following the YouTube and trying to listen on.
Okay,
So
thank
could you give me the YouTube I just log into YouTube and it'll automatically be there, the latest?
Yes, so guess what? The YouTube version of this training will also be on our website. So you can view
No,
it.
but I mean for me to follow around now, if I want to follow that now while Heather is talking.
Well, I'm at the podium, so I can't help you with that. Hopefully, when we turn on the webinar for the EFI and the EUA, we will have that set up, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Louise, can you help her?
Hi, under the current research for Core Level 2, it mentions ethics training and says you can use your annual HHS ethics training certificate.
Yes.
And then the next one about preventing fraud and abuse, again, it said your annual required training, and I couldn't identify which training we have to take anyway that it should be called that.
So you're talking about what's in process now?
Yes.
So everyone takes a mandatory annual fraud and abuse and prevention.
Is that the one that's called counterintelligence or?
No, it's actually fraud and abuse. And if you go into the LMS and search it by that title, it should come up.
Okay.
Okay? Any
I
other?
have a question.
Sure.
In terms of going from no core certification to a core level 2 certification, do you have to be a certified core previously, let's say for a year, in order to apply for core level 2 certification if you've had adequate acquisitions experience?
No.
Okay.
So when you fill out, maybe you can take a look at the transcript. Those are the 13 competencies you have to display and some type of experience that you've had within the last 2 years. And if you can fill that out, then you should be good to go, along with the training, completing the training. Right, so like I mentioned before, the core does not require you to start with level 1 and then graduate to level 2 and then graduate to level 3. And you can start anywhere in that certification level, but you have to have the experience to account for it. Any other questions?
Yes. If I take the EUA, EFI training during the cycle, do I have to take it again?
No,
once I apply for certification?
No, you do not.
Okay.
Okay, so for the interest of time, we're going to move on to our next section, and this is our contact information, but of course you'll see this if you go online. I think everybody knows my contact information, to be truthful, but and Louise. So we want to share with you a big change that's coming with policy, data, and systems. And here today I have Nathaniel Dean that will speak with you briefly in reference to that.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go over some changes that have already gone live in CAMS. They were associated with our 7.3 upgrade. And so my first question to anyone in the room is, are you responsible for putting requisitions into CAMS? Show of hands. All right. Next question. Do you typically, on contracts you administer, move money on the contract between CLINs? Show of hands. Only one person. Excellent. Anyone that's going to be moving money between CLINs, there's going to be new system limitations. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, there we go. We are no longer going to be able to move money on a contract without a requisition. So let's say you've got $100 on CLIN 1 and $200 on CLIN 2. If you want to move $50 from CLIN 2 to CLIN 1, we're going to have two options on how we do that. One, if the program office has the $50 in a line of accounting somewhere, we can do it with one contract action. That's going to require a RFC package with a requisition with the additional $50, and then the modification will deobligate the money from CLIN 2 and obligate the new money you've provided with the requisition with CLIN 1. If the money's not available, there's a second option, but that takes two contractual actions. We'll actually have to do a contractual action, one mod, to deobligate all the funds, have that money go all the way back through the process, be reobligated to a new requisition, and do a new contract action to obligate that money. So all of these changes are a part of things that we're changing as a result of the Data Act and the CAMS high glass integration. That's a pretty complicated explanation. I see some confused faces in the crowd, so I'm going to try just this, really to simplify this. If you've got money existing on your contract, we need new recs to move it. We can't just move it if it's already obligated to the contract. And so we're just going to have to get a lot more disciplined about when we're moving money, realizing there's going to be a lot more contractual actions behind it, because there has to be that tracking not only in CAMS, but in high glass. So any questions on that? Is that making sense? Easy crowd. Some other things that are going to come up that are impacting you. We were revising the core contract file checklist. So it was pretty long, pretty voluminous. We heard from the core community that because of its length and because of its detail, that it was a little bit too cumbersome. So we're coming up with a revised version of that, which should be significantly truncated. I know you've already discussed about changes that are coming to the core manual. Shameless plug, anybody write in acquisition plans? Because there's information for you not just in the core community. Go also to the program project manager community. There's guides there on writing acquisition plans, new templates, and information that we're putting out constantly associated with acquisition planning. So I really encourage you to also review that portion of AGX. And the last thing that I would just say about the core community is a thank you. I know we reach out to different members of the group. I'm sure they're on the phone or in the room that provide us information and help for the things that we do in the policy group, and we really appreciate your help. So if there's no questions, Can you repeat where the acquisition plan went? I'm sorry, I missed that part. Oh, absolutely. So the training materials and the guide materials for the acquisition plan, it's on AGX, but it's not in the core community. It's in the program project manager community under acquisition plan development. There's a guide there and templates and also an example. And yes, sir.
If we'd be obligating money from a contract to, I guess, send back to the project line, are we going to have to put in a CAMS package for that as well?
We're going to still need an RFC package, but if you're only deobligating the funds, you won't need a new rec just to deobligate.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. My name is Nathaniel Dean. Feel free to reach out to me for any questions or concerns you have about these topics.
I do want to ask, are there any questions on the phone in reference to the new changes for the system? Moderator, can you open the line?
Sure, give me 1 second. All lines have now been unmuted. If you have a verbal question, you may ask it now.
Any questions on the system changes? Okay, thank you very much. And now this part of the training will go with Heather Brown, who is going to talk about EUA and EFI. Thank you.
I'll wait a minute for them to get my screen up there. There we go. Okay, so EUA is actually made up of 3 separate systems. The first is Governance Minder, which we more refer to it as SAC, or the System Access Certification. The second is IDM, which is this EUA system that you use most frequently, and the third is EFI. So I'm going to go over all 3 systems today and some features in the systems that will help you guys. So the first one I'm going to go over is Governance Minder. And now all my screens are going to look slightly different than when you guys log in because I have administrative rights. So if you see a bunch of stuff that you don't see, that's normal. So the System Access Certification Portal is where you would go to approve any user's annual recertification or out-of-cycle certification. It's taking its time logging me in. The most common thing that I hear when people log in is, I went in and I approved everything, but it's still showing in my queue and it's showing X amount of days overdue. What I tell cores to do is don't pay attention to how many days overdue it is, pay attention to the percentage complete. If the percentage complete shows 100%, then you have done what you need to do. If it shows anything but 100%, you still have an action to take. The other thing within SAC is if you're going to be out of the office, all 3 of these systems have the ability to set up a delegation. If you're going to be out for a day, I really wouldn't worry about it, but if you're going to be out for any length of time, delegate your work to somebody else, because that saves a lot of people a lot of opening up service requests to get stuff redirected. Sometimes IDs get deleted because nobody's there to approve or reject requests. So in Governance Minder, the way to delegate is you just roll over, share my work. Sorry. And then you start typing in the name of whomever you want to delegate it to, and then you simply select their name and say share. And now any new certification requests coming in for you will be routed to whoever you selected. That is all I have for the SAC piece. Are there any questions around SAC before I get into the EUA part? Yes. He asked if when he comes back, if he has to turn the feature off, and the answer is yes. In this system. And because it's 3 systems, you actually have to set up 3 separate delegations. So in this one, the answer is yes. In one of the other ones, the answer is no, and I'll cover that when I get to that one. Okay, I'm going to go into the EUA piece. When you receive emails telling you you have something to approve, there's generally a link in the emails, and if you click on the links, it will send you to whichever system your approval is waiting. Okay, so everything under Home, every single user has, regardless of whether you're a business owner, a CAA, an admin, every user has it. Right here is the out-of-office assistant for EUA. And here you simply click on out-of-office. You want to change this to whatever you want to search on. So if you know the person's ID or their last name, however you want to search. I'm going to search for someone by an ID, and you say search. Oops, wrong ID. Oh, sorry. Click add user first. Then I type in the ID. And then when the results come back, you just select and hit submit right here. And now my delegation's turned on in EUA. Any new requests coming in are going to go to whoever I delegate it to. All of these requests are currently pending my approval. They do not get sent to the person I delegated it to. They're still in my queue, but anything new coming in will go to whoever I delegated it to. If you scroll down, you see a note that your delegation's on. And then to turn it off, we're going to go back to out-of-office assistant. Click this little red line, and then submit it. And now my delegation's turned off. If you ever want to know who you are the first approver for, every user has this view IDs I manage. When you click on this, your ID is always going to be listed here. In EUA, the asterisk is a wild card. And there are always different searches. You can do equals, contains. I always suggest contains, because if you don't know what it is that you're looking for, if you don't type it exactly correct, you're not going to get results. We're going to do a wildcard search, and this is going to give me every single user that I am the first approver for. And once I get here, I can see all kinds of information about these users. This user here is revoked administrator. That means that it's just a shell account. This account hasn't been activated yet, so nobody can do anything with it until the CAA activates the account. Let me go to a user who is active. And once I get in here, I can see a lot of information about the user. I can see that this particular user is due to complete their system access certification. They've already completed their CBT. They're going to be revoked on November 1st, the last time they changed their password, how long they've had their user ID. If you scroll down, you can see their phone number, their email address, their company name, their work address, and the work address should always be where they physically work, not where their company is. If they're 100% telecommute and their company's based out of Indiana, but they work in Alaska, then it should be Alaska. CMS employees will have a desk location and a mail stop. If this particular user was a contractor, the contract number would be listed under contract ID. And contractors can have up to 4 contract numbers associated with their account. Anytime a contract is getting close to expiring, the COR will receive an email with instructions telling them that the contract is going to expire in 30 days, and it will give them 3 options. The first option is if the contract is ending and these users are not continuing to work with CMS, then when the contract ends, you need to ensure that the IDs are deleted. And this is true not just for contracts ending. If you know of any user that has left the contract, you need to delete their accounts immediately. EUA averages 1,000 users, 95% of them are contractors, get deleted every month for failure to recertify, and those users have left sometime during the course of the year and nobody's entered a delete request. So the email, that's the first option. The second option is if the contract numbers or the stop date of the contract is getting extended, you need to work with the CO to ensure that CAMS gets updated with the new end date of that contract. CAMS feeds EUA contract information. So if it's wrong in CAMS, it's going to be wrong in EUA. And the third option in that email is if the users are switching to a new contract number. If that's the case, then you need to work with your CAA to get the users assigned to the previous contract assigned to the new contract. The CAAs know how to do that. It's covered in their guides. You just need to let them know these users need to be assigned to the new contract. Underneath of organization, you won't see all of this stuff. You're only going to have 2 options, but the email is going to direct you to go to view contract identities, and it's going to have the contract number that's getting ready to expire. So you can just type it in and do a search, and this will tell you all the users associated with any contract number. You can't look at the details like you could on the previous screen, but you can see how many users are on this contract, and these are the users you need to tell the CAA. If this contract was getting ready to expire, these are the names that the CAA would need to move. And they can also go to view contract identity as well. So if you just give them the contract number and say all the users on this contract need to be moved to this new contract number, they can look this up as well. View contract, we can type in any contract number and see all the information that we get from CAMS. One other thing that's important to note, if it's in CAMS but it hasn't been released, then EUA doesn't have that information. It has to be put in release status in order for EUA to receive it. And we don't receive our feeds until the middle of the night, so if a change is put in today, it's not going to be reflected in EUA until tomorrow morning. So all of this information is what we're getting from CAMS each night. It's got the contract, it's got the company name, the contract number, the COR's name, and the CO's name. And last but not least is the POC's name. This is extremely important that this information is correct, especially the email address. I'm going to cover that when we get into EFI, but if this information is wrong, when we get to EFI, the requests are going to be routed to the incorrect person. The last piece of EUA is the EUA info. This is another section that all users have access to. You can see who a CAA is. We have internal and external CAAs. An external CAA, it can only see users at their company. They cannot see CMS employees. They cannot see people that work for another company. A CMS CAA can see all 48,000 users in the system. So if you want to look up, if you're looking up for a CMS CAA, you can type in the acronym of their group and just do a search, and it will give you the names of the CAAs in any group. You can go, I don't suggest doing division level, group or higher, because otherwise some divisions don't have CAAs. If you want to do a company, you can do a partial search, and here's all the Northrop Grumman CAAs. So Northrop Grumman CAAs can only see users within their company. Any questions on so far? Go ahead. Your mic.
In the case of where you have a contractor who's doing two separate contracts at CMS, and there's a separate core for each contract, when you get approvals coming through for access, it's the job codes, who's supposed to approve it? Is it the particular?
So we've just recently, like last year, added the capability to have more than one contract, and that question's been coming up a lot lately. One of the things that we're going to be implementing in the very near future is anytime a contract number gets added or removed from a user's profile, we're going to have an email sent to all the cores of all of the contract numbers that the user has or is being removed from. Just as an FYI, this user is now on these contracts and who the other cores are. We're going to leave it up to the cores to communicate between each other. You can do one of two things. You can work with the core and approve access that they need for the other contract, or you can have the CAA change the other person to the first approver. They can approve the access, and then when you need to approve something, whatever works better for you, but there's only one first approver that EUA can allow. I did forget to mention one other thing, and it's the job code listing here. This is every single job code in the EUA system. There are 13,000, I believe. EUA does not know what 99% of them do. You have to go to the business owner of the job codes to determine what access they grant. Look at it as like a library. People check their books in. The librarian might not know what's in the book. So we rely on the business owners to, they reach out to us and say, can you please put this job code into EUA? We put the job code in exactly how they tell us to. We only have the information that they give us. So I'm going to just do a search for VPN job codes. Now here's all the VPN job codes. Here's who the business owners are. Here's the description of the job code. If the description is too vague, you need to go to the business owner and ask them. And I know some of the job codes were just like one-liners and nobody knew what it was, so they started bugging the business owners, and the business owners went in and updated the descriptions to be a little bit more user-friendly. And the business owners do have the capability to make those updates themselves within EUA. So if you have a question as to what this job code does, you need to contact one of these people, because EUA doesn't know what the job codes do, unless it's one of the EUA job codes.
Hi, I have a question about who is a point of contact over at CAMS if we see an error in EUA that we would need to contact CAMS.
The contract officer.
Thank you.
Oh, we have a question up here. I think there's a mic in the middle of the room, too, that works.
If a contractor employee can have only one first approver, but is on more than one contract, how is it determined what that one first approver will be?
The way EUA works is when an ID is created, the first person to approve that create user is who gets named as the first approver. If you're the core on a contract and you are out of the office and you have your delegation set, and you have me as your delegate, and I approve a create user, I'm now listed as that person's first approver because I was the first person to approve the create identity. But the CAA can go in and change it back to you as being that person's first approver. So you just need to work with the CAA to have the first approvers listed whichever way works for you guys. In theory, you should be listed as the first approver for everyone on your contracts. Any other questions in the room? Do we want to, oh, sorry, one more.
I just had a quick question. You talked about the external CAA. Can you
Yep.
explain the role of what
So
that
an
is?
external CAA and an internal CAA, the only difference is an external CAA cannot change a first approver because we don't want them changing it to somebody at their company. And they can only see people within their company. That's the only difference. They can do everything that a CMS CAA can do with those two exceptions.
Okay, so they can, I mean, like, do they put in requests for user access? Is that?
They just get connected to the CAA job code.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yep. We don't recommend CAAs, external CAAs, if it's a small company, only if it's like more than 50 people. But it does help a lot because if someone's leaving the company, they're going to know pretty quickly that someone's leaving and they can get those IDs deleted right away. Any other questions in the room? Do we want to open up the line for questions?
We're going to.
All lines are open. Hi, I have a question. Actually, I have two questions. The first is, if the person who is the point of contact for a contract, they need to add an additional person for the EFI approval, how does one go about doing that?
I'll get into that when we start discussing EFI.
Okay. For a business, for a job code business owner approver, you were talking a little bit about being able to change the job code. Can you change the business owner approver in EUA, or do you have to do that through a service request?
The business owner themselves can change the information in EUA.
But, so they could change the business owner to somebody, a different approver?
Right. Like,
Okay.
this manage my job codes, first approvers don't have this, but business owners do. And they can see all job codes that they are the owner of, and they can manipulate those job codes however they need to.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I have a question similar to what was just asked. So if you want, the business owner can add another person as an approver for certain job codes?
Correct.
Okay, and then you showed earlier how you can look up a bunch of information for a user, like their address, contract number, and things like that. When the initial request comes in, when a user is requesting access to a specific job code, where do you find on that request their address information, any of that type of information?
Like their physical address?
Yes, or what company they work for.
That's under View IDs I manage.
But I'm talking about the initial request. If you get a user that comes in and they just want to request access to a specific job code.
Well, you can take that user ID. So these are all the things that are pending my approval right now. But I'm not the first approver of any of these, so I'm going to do it a little bit different just because I'm not the first approver, I'm the business owner. But I'm just going to take one of these IDs and I'll just look up my own ID, actually, and show you. If you went to View IDs I manage, and then you type the person's ID that's putting the request in.
Okay.
So we'll just pretend I'm in View IDs I manage because it's basically the same thing. And then you just type in the user ID that you want to get more information on and select them. And then all of their information will be displayed, their company, their contract numbers, all of that.
But what if it's a brand new user?
So if it's a brand new user that's already been activated, they would be under View User IDs I manage because you approved the shell account. But if it's a brand new create user identity, I actually have one of them in my queue right now. That information should be in the request as it comes in. Let me pull it up. So this is a new user request, and it lists the justification. It has their name, contract. This is a federal person, but it would have their contract number. So if it's an initial create user request, all that information is in the request that gets sent to you.
So you would look that up first, and then you can go back to the request you received before you approve it.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there a guide or instructions that gives you all this information that you've just explained?
Yeah, so all of the information I'm covering today is in the EUA guides. Fahmeen, if I give you the links, can you put it up there? So I'll get it over to Fahmeen. There's 2 links. There's one for being internal and one for being external. If you're VPN from home, you may have to use the external. And it does require a user ID and password. I will show you how to log into that and where all those guides are in a little bit. But
Great,
everything I
thank
go
you.
over today is covered there.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on the phone? Okay, we have one more in the room.
Yeah, quick question. When a COR is assigned to a contract and they've approved some users and then they are reassigned and there's a new COR, I would imagine once the contracting officer, makes them the official COR, they would approve any future new ones, but what happens to the old ones?
So here's how it works. Let's take you and I. If Marcy is the COR for a contract and there are 10 users on that contract and you were the first approver for 9 and somebody over here, you were out of the office and you delegated it to John, and John's the approver of 1 person, you're the approver of 9, and now you're no longer listed as the COR in CAMS, I am. EUA, when it gets that nightly feed, it's going to make me the COR of that contract and remove you from those 9 individuals and make me the COR. But that 1 person over here, John, is still going to be left as the approver. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically it should happen automatically when a new COR is assigned. They don't have to ask for all of them to be trained.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So you said the external CAs can request any job code?
There are some business owners, and I can speak for the VPN ones, some business owners require a CMS person to submit the request, but the majority of job codes, yes.
And then can all of them be approved, or are there some that we can't approve? And I'm thinking of something called a special job code that we're having trouble getting approved.
So the way it works is all job codes require you as the COR to approve that the user can have the access. But just because you approve it does not mean that the end user is going to get it. The business owner has the ultimate say whether or not they can have access. So if you approve it and it goes to the business owner and they don't like the justification that was provided, or they're saying, no, this user's justification, they're a developer but they're requesting access to production, and they reject it, then the user doesn't get the access.
Okay, so we have to take it up with the business owner.
Exactly.
So a contractor employee is working on a CMS contract with that company. And if the employee changes the CMS contract with the same company, his or her CMS user ID doesn't have to be deleted, we just change the contract number.
In that instance, yes.
Yes. If the contractor employee changes companies and works on a CMS contract, either the same contract or another CMS contract, then that contract employee has to request a new CMS user ID?
With one exception. If a contract ends and if company A has that contract and the contract ends and company B wins the recompete and company B hires everyone working for company A, those users can keep their user ID and access. That's the only time that you can keep your ID when switching from one company to another, is during a recompete. Okay, now I'm going to get into EFI. So most of you have probably heard talks about EFI and what it is. So first I'm going to go over what the user, a new applicant, sees, and then I'll go over where your process is. EFI is the EUA front-end interface. It is going to eliminate all paperwork when it comes to the old 237, the HHS 745. You won't have to deal with any of that paperwork anymore. A new applicant, if they take a job at a company, they're generally going to give a couple weeks notice before they start. That company is going to give a bunch of paperwork, W-2s and all that stuff. At that time, the company can provide the EFI user guide to that new person, and they can start this process before they've even started working. So, and all of this that I'm going to cover for the user, there's a separate user guide for them. They would click on register. They would type in a username and a password and their email address. This is in no way tied to EUA right now. They're going to get a confirmation email. They're going to respond to the confirmation email, and then their account becomes active. And then they can log in with the user ID and password that they created. Sorry. I need to go slower because I think I'm mistyping. There we go. Okay, so when the user logs in, this is what their screen is going to look like. They're going to click on Access, and it's going to ask them a series of questions. We've had several cores piloting this for a while, and one of the cores made like a little cover sheet, cheat sheet, that I thought was a great idea, because there's certain information that EFI is going to ask the new applicant that they're probably not going to know the answer to. So you can make like a little cheat sheet for each company so that they know what information to put in those fields. The first piece of information is the type of, what category they are. In your case, they're going to be contractors, and then they get a subset of questions. They're never going to be other, so please don't tell them to select other. If you see it come through with other, reject it. More than likely, it's going to be the majority of contractors are falling under the IT development and support contractor. If they don't, you probably know that they don't. So they're going to tell them which one to select here. Then their justification why they need a new user ID. The next group of information is all their personal information. If the person says that they are not a U.S. citizen, then they're required to enter all this additional information, their visa number, where they were born, have they lived in the U.S. for number of years they've lived in the U.S. for the past 5 years. Then they get down to their contact information. We have it here, where you perform your work each day. It goes back to my scenario. If your home base is in Dallas and you work in Alaska, you put Alaska. The badging office is going to be using this information to send travel teams around the country, so if it's wrong, they're going to go to the wrong place. The next set of information is the region in which they work, and then the contract number. Now this is the most important piece. Right now it's an IDIQ, and if they select this, the whole entire request when they hit submit is going to go to the wrong group of people. So it's very important that they select the right contract number. So when you give them this little cheat sheet, make sure you have the full contract number with the task order. It does start to auto-populate as they start typing so they can select, and when they select a different contract number, you see this POC and company name down here. This POC is pulling from the same place I showed you earlier in EUA. When the applicant submits this request, it's going to send this person right here an email telling them they need to approve it. That POC is basically attesting that, yes, this person is a new hire at our company, and then they will approve it. But if this email address is wrong, then they're not going to get a notice that they have something to approve. So before somebody starts using EFI, make sure it's right in CAMS. I have seen some cases where there was just a fat finger in CAMS and they forgot a dot or they forgot the M at the end of .com and the emails were failing. If the user is requiring a PIV, they will need to upload their PIV training certificate and they can just upload that here. If you require any documents, you can ask them to upload those documents here as well. They would use the other documents. Once they've completed everything, they're going to, I always suggest, and the guide suggests, hitting save. That way, all their information is saved, and if something goes awry, they don't have to retype everything in. They're then going to hit submit. I can't hit submit because it's going to reject me because I already have an account. Once they hit submit, they're going to get a pop-up. That pop-up is going to be a signature box. If they have a touch screen, they can use their finger, otherwise they can use their mouse. They're going to sign their name. Then it's going to send an email to the POC to approve. Now, a lot of times the POC is the CEO or the VP of a company, and we know that they're not going to approve requests on a regular basis. So they have to log in one time and set up a delegation, and then they don't have to do it anymore. And there's also a guide for them. Once the POC approves it, it's going to go to your queue, and you're going to get an email. Now I'm going to show you that, but now I have to log into Val, so bear with me a second. When you log in to EFI, you will log in with your PIV, always. When you log in, I probably have to log back in. So when you log in, this is what it's going to look like for you. I told you there was 3 systems, so there's 3 different out of office. To delegate in EFI, you just click on Delegate Approval. You can search however you want to search. Find the person and then just submit whoever you want to be your delegate. To see what request you have pending your approval, you're going to click on Access Request, or you can click on Manage right here, whichever is easier for you. These are all the requests pending my approval right now. I'm going to go in and I'm going to review each one of them. So all the information that the user submitted is going to appear here. Scroll through. Now, if you notice right here, it says that PIV. You always want to go click on Edit, and then you're going to answer this question. Does this user need a PIV? So I'm first going to cover the no, this user doesn't need a PIV. So you see at the bottom, there's only 3 buttons now. If I hit Reject and Delete, if you find out that this applicant's no longer an employee at the company, you hit Reject and Delete. It wipes it completely out of the system. If you notice that something's missing, they used the wrong contract number or something's incorrect, return it for modification. You're going to get a pop-up to enter why you're returning it, and then it will submit it back to the applicant with the notes as to why you rejected it. The other is Approve. Now, for a non-PIV user, when you hit Approve, it's going to send a transaction to EUA to create a user ID. You and the applicant will receive an email once the ID has been created with the user ID saying this is the user's shell account. It's just a shell account. It doesn't have any access. And from that point on, it picks up where the current process is. Once a user gets a shell account, the CA has to activate it, get connected to job codes. From that point on, it's business as usual. But to get the user ID, everything will go through EFI. Now, if the user needs a PIV, you say yes. You're going to get asked a few questions. What are the PDT results? So we're going to say this one is high. We're going to save it. If the user is getting a PIV, they have to have uploaded the training certificate. Right here, training certificate, and here's the document. You're going to click on Review and Sign. It will open up a 745. It does take a second because when you hit Review and Sign, it's taking all the information that the user entered into the system and it's generating a 745. Everything's going to be filled in, but please double check it. If anything's blank, populate it. It shouldn't be, but just in case. I told you when the applicant hits submit, they get a little signature box. Here's the applicant's signature because they signed it on the computer. Sorry, it's moving really slow. Okay, all of your information is going to be populated in the sponsor information. You want to select the sensitivity level here to match the PDT results. If you have a sponsor ID, you're going to enter your sponsor ID. Ensure, again, that everything's been filled out properly. Make sure the contract number is correct and the dates are correct. This is also pulling from CAMS, so it should be correct. And then you're going to sign it. Once you sign it, it looks like this. You're going to save this to your desktop, just temporarily. You're going to go back to EFI, and you're going to hit Approve. Now, when you hit Approve, you're going to locate the 745 that you've just signed. And then you're going to locate the PDT, because you're going to have to go and fill out a PDT. You're going to locate that, and you're going to attach it, and then you hit Approve. Now, when you hit Approve here, because this user requires a PIV, it's going to do two things simultaneously. The first is it's going to send the request to EUA, like I had mentioned earlier. The second, it's going to send an email to OSO that there's a request in their queue pending their review. And then they will process the forms electronically, so you don't have to hand carry anything down to the badging office. We're not telling you if the users aren't currently requesting a PIV, that doesn't mean because you're using EFI that they need a PIV. Business as usual as far as who gets a PIV. We're just saying that instead of filling out paperwork, you can now use EFI. If you ever want to know where something is, there's an application status report. And this, you can type in partial strands of a user's name, the company name, your name, and you can do a search. And it will give you the results as to where the request is. So if it says pending federal approver, it's waiting for you. One of them is pending POC. If it says pending POC, this is the email address that the request was sent to. One of the requests might say, if it says EUA complete, then it's done. The EFI not submitted, the applicant saved their request, but they haven't submitted it yet. One of them, I don't have any up here, but one of them is a pending review by OSO. One of them is the request is under review, and one is that OSO has accepted it. If OSO has accepted it, it doesn't mean that their badge is ready to be issued. It just means that they've reviewed the paperwork and they're satisfied with the paperwork. And then it's going to start their normal process. Okay, questions?
So when and how is this going to be rolled out for us to use?
If you want to use it now, you can. If you don't want to use it now, you will get a notice when you have to use it.
Okay, for the PDT?
Mm-hmm.
So you want that should be done before or simultaneously when you're sending them the link for EFI?
What is your question?
Well, you said, right, the PDT is part of the EFI, because in there you got to choose the sensitivity.
To
right? So
upload the form.
Right, so you need to do the form either simultaneously or before you get them to input into EFI.
Before you approve it, not before the applicant submits it, before you approve it.
Before I approve it, okay.
Right.
And then on the space on the 745, when you showed the sponsor, there's also a box to the left.
You don't need to fill that out.
Not anymore? Okay.
Question on the delegate. So if you delegate to someone to approve while you're out, is there any way to get a report of all those that were approved while you were out in the various systems? Because you don't know what you don't know.
So if you are the core for the contract, if you remember an EUA, you could type a contract number in and it would tell you all the identities on that contract. One of the columns that it displays is the first approver of all those individuals. So if you did a search for contract 123, it would show you all the users on that contract and who the first approver is. So you could just scroll through and look for your ID not to be listed as the first approver.
Well, I suppose that if it was a small contract, not a big deal, but some of our contracts could be hundreds of employees.
You can actually do multiple, give me 1 second, because it's been a while since I've done this. Contract management, view, contract. Sorry, I have to log back in. Are there any other questions while I'm doing this? Okay, hang on 1 second. So you can do multiple searches if you click on this plus. So the first search part would be this contract number, and the second part would be first approver, and then you'd put your ID, or you could do not equal to your ID, and it would display everybody that doesn't have you as a first approver for this contract.
So there's no way to request an automatic report?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions in the room? Any questions on the phone?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If a person already has an EUA ID, but we want to initiate them getting a PIV and the background investigation, can we still use EFI?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, in no way are we saying that everyone needs a PIV. We're not saying that. If the users...
No, but our contractors, some of them do need PIVs.
In that case, yes. When the applicant goes in their guide, they have 2 options. Sorry, I'm trying to find where I'm logged in as the user. Give me a second. I'll log back in as the user. So when they log in, they have 2 options. The first that I went over is like requesting a new ID. The second is request or update a PIV. So if their PIV is expired or they lost their PIV, they would request on update PIV. It would follow the same process, but when the COR approved it, it wouldn't send any notice to EUA. It would only send it to badging because we know they already have a user ID.
Okay, so it does submit the HHS 745 to badging.
Correct.
Okay. Can we limit, and maybe this is for OSSO, I did ask them about a year ago about this. Can we limit PIVs to just be the access to the laptops and the systems and not physical access into the buildings?
No.
Okay. And are you going to share the slides, and how do we train our contractors to use this?
I don't have any slides. I was doing a live demo, and
right.
I do have the guides to show you, but on OAGM's website, I know the new contract language mentions using EFI, and on their website, they have a link to the guides. So you can just provide the link to the guides.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
We have a question in the room.
Yes, so we can ask our contractors if they already have this and want to use it, or we can tell them they can apply to use this. What is the
Nobody
process?
has to apply. If you have a contract that's existing, they don't need to go in here. Unless their PIV has expired and they lost their PIV, that would be one option. Or if you have a new award or an existing contract has a new hire, then they can come through EFI.
But they know how to do that.
You have to give them the guide, like direct them to the guide.
Okay.
Now, to get to the guides, and Famane's going to put these links, you're going to have to log in with a user ID and password. It's your EUA user ID and password. But all of our guides are kept here. And we're getting our OIT intranet site updated to reference these links as well. But we have, for EUA, we have and SAC, we have the CAA guide, the user guide, and the approver's guide. And then for EFI, we have the user's guide, the COR's guide, and the POC guide. And the POC and the user guide is also on OAGM's site because since this needs a user ID and password to get to. Theirs is public facing. Any other questions? That's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. A lot of information shared today. Hopefully, we will get all the hard copies of this information on our website. Of course, if you need more information, you have different points of contact. Heather is going to send me the user guides, but going forward, this information will be in the contract itself, and the contractor will have the links to go into the system and do the information they need to do. But just keep in mind that this training is mandatory, so tell your friends at their cores that they need to be aware of this, because we are making sure that all the cores has a general knowledge of how to do this. Thank you, everyone. This ends the training.
Hello.
So we got word that we have to send it out to have all